finding your niche or like your field and why that matters. I think I talked about it a little bit. Your niche or your field cannot be too broad. You cannot go up and say like I am an outstanding data engineer. Like if you try and do that, you'll never be able to prove you're like in the top 10% of your field. And you also want to show like how exactly the work that you're doing is gonna like help. How are you helping out? Like you are an amazing data engineer. Okay, what? Like I'm a regular USCIS officer guy. I don't understand what language model means. I have no idea what artificial intelligence is or machine learning is. These are like just buzzwords for me, which I think are going to be amazing for economy, but I have no idea how to use them. So you have to treat them like a kid and basically make sure that you simplify and explain them like, what does this means? How do you come up to a niche? You have to think about three or four different things. One is what your technical skills going to look like what do I do technically? Am I a business leader, or I am an engineering leader, or I am a product manager, or I am android developer, or I'm a cybersecurity expert, or like whatnot? That becomes your technical skills. Then what's your domain? Like what domain you have been working in? Like either you have been like in finance, or you have been in e-commerce or manufacturing or supply chain. That becomes your domain. Then becomes your projects, like what sort of like projects you are involved in, like within this domain. Or sometimes people might not have a domain and they might just have like projects. Difficult to explain, but I'll try and give an example in the next slide. But your project basically is like what kind of projects you have been involved at your work. Because like let's say you you don't really have a domain because you first had a job which was like in a finance company, and then you had a job which like a startup around manufacturing and whatnot. So you like never were able to build a domain because you were job hopping. So in that case, your projects become important. So like this is how we technically play this game of like, okay, what's like a common thread? What type of like projects I was involved in and how do I utilize them? And then the last aspect is like, how do you tie this all into national interest? National interest is not directly a requirement in EB1 and O1A, but it's always super important to kind of create like an holistic story and prove that like the work that I have been doing, it's going to be like super important for the economy, because that's how like an officer will like give your application more value over other applications. So that's one aspect. Developing a niche, so like this is an example of like how you could have like multiple sort of like ways about going about a niche. If you think like your technical skill, domain, and projects, all three are tying in together, then you have a very solid niche. Then that becomes easier. Like this is one of the parameters which we use to take in consideration when we'll decide if we can take a fork in or if we cannot take an application in. Because if we cannot get a niche for you, then we cannot do anything for you. Like that's like the base. So for example, if you have like a technical skill and domains, let's say if you were a developer who used to work at Amazon, and then you worked at Walmart, and then you worked at Target. So like you clearly can show that your domain has been like in e-commerce technology. And then all of your tech skills are tied to, enhancing like retail experience through innovation. So it clearly demonstrates like a clear advance on like national like commerce and consumer experiences. So like some of this stuff is like easy to do. Similarly, let's say being more project focused. So in this case, you worked at Amazon, then you worked at Zoom, and then you worked at a manufacturing startup in cybersecurity. Or this is just your first job and it's like a couple of years at a manufacturing startup. But throughout these companies, you were focused around like cybersecurity. Then that kind of becomes like your project focus, and you kind of say like he's a cybersecurity solution focusing on like safeguarding national industrial data and whatnot. That kind of shows like a clear narrative around your profile. So this is how we try and tie down the niche of like where exactly do you land up. um some examples of like good and bad niches. Most of the times you'll see like when people like try and fight their own cases or like try and do this, you'll see a bad example of a niche, something like skilled AI slash ML and data engineer with expertise in developing innovative solutions across machine learning, data analytics, and automation, experienced in building systems that drive efficiency, enhance insights, and deliver impactful results across various industries. I have absolutely no idea what this guy does other than that he's like an AI ML and data engineer. That's all I am getting honestly from here. So it's like too broad and like doesn't really tie down into anything. Versus
Exactly.
now, yeah. Versus now, if you look at this one, this says veteran machine learning engineer developing cutting edge AI ML solutions. Now, this is all jargon until here. And it's good to put jargon, which is of national interest. Like right now, AI and ML are like of importance to USCIS, but a lot of people throw them randomly as well. So now you want to show like how exactly are you utilizing that. So then it says particularly in deep learning, generative AI, and NLP, contributing towards. Now we talk about what's your niche is, in what particular area, but what are you contributing towards. So innovating proprietary speech recognition system, PII identification models, and advanced information retrieval systems. What exactly is it doing though? It's driving customer enhancement with real-time personalization and insights across calls, messages, and chatbots. Now the national interest, efficiently improving investment outcomes and protecting vulnerable clients from like fraud, demonstrating the transformative potential of AI across industries. So this is specific, very detailed, clearly shows what you did, the exact specific projects, highlighting few of them, what it contributed towards, and then how the national interest ties in. So like this is how you want to play your story. Now proving yourself in top 10% is difficult. Proving yourself top 10% here is not that difficult because not a lot of people are doing it. Um, so that's how you have, be more strategical.
Good example, man. Yeah.
Yeah. EB1A criterias or O1A, take both of them hand in hand. We usually like try and like ideally my goal is to like always shoot for EB1A, because what
Mm.
happens if you shoot for the bigger examination, the lower examination is easier to crack and you can
Right.
always get it done. So I divided this into level 1 and 2 because this is not very clear on USCIS own website. It is not true that qualifying for 3 out of the 10 criterias will give you an EB1A. Usually there is a two-level judging. And this is true for O1 as well. There's usually like a two-level judging. First thing that you want is basically three. If you qualify for three, then it kind of means like, okay, you have passed like the basic parameter. Now let's look at this profile more holistically and see like there is substance. Will it bring enough value to United States? And that's where like you need to have like a compelling story and sustained greatness. That's like level 2. Level 1, you have like awards, membership, original contribution, published material, authorship, judging, critical role, high salary, artistic exhibitions, and commercial success. The last two usually does not count in a lot of cases with technical folks. Like these are the two which will basically probably use in someone like the Nari Singh case, which I talked about. Um, but most of the people in technical field, we play with like the top eight.
Mm.
Um, I'll quickly give a review of those criteria. Critical role simply means that you're able to prove that you're playing a critical role at your current workplace. Usually, there are multiple ways of doing it. You collect evidences of the projects you are working in, letter of appreciations, letter of recommendations, and all that stuff. High remuneration basically means that you're earning in like top 10%. You're in like in the 90th percentile. It's an apple to apple comparison. So basically, if you are
Yeah.
ask me like what is the amount I need to earn, and there's no answer to that. Like it depends on like your SOC codes and like a comparison. If you are a software developer one, you get compared to like every software developer one, and you need to prove you're earning in like top 10%. That's how it goes. You're not gonna get compared to someone who's a CEO. One change though is like USCIS lately is not preferring geographical location comparison. They are doing a national level comparison. So
Oh,
yeah, so that's an advantage for people living on the coast, because like
got
usually
it.
we have higher salaries on east and west coast. um I don't think this is the right thing to do on USCIS parts, but I think it's good for people in tech,
Mm.
simply because like on the coast it's easier to prove. Then you have authorship, which simply means like if you have written like some sort of like authorship around like your niche with like paper, book, or whatnot. Original contribution is like whatever you have done has that contributed significantly in the field. It could be like citations, it could be like industrial usage, it could be patents, it could be like original contribution letters, it could be anything of that sort. Membership, pretty self-explanatory within your fields, like Steam membership that you have, judging if you have judged other people's work, award is if you have received an award. And then press is like if your work has been covered in the media and whatnot. So those like a outline of the criterias. Um, this is a quick example of like how would you apply your niche to individual criteria. So for example, like it's super important to make sure like whatever work you do, all of that stuff is aligned. You cannot go criteria by criteria. It has to be a story around your niche. So for example, like let's say you are someone who's like working in like um for General Motors, let's say, which is like a car manufacturing company, and you're like kind
Yeah.
of working with them around like road safety and whatnot. And then you're building like data pipelines for them. So usually like people will come up with topic is like, hey, I worked on this data pipeline where we can like, scale the data ingestion. and they'll come up with a research paper topic called scalability in data ingestion, which is not a good topic. It's very generic, lacks context, does not tie with your domain and like what exactly do you implement it for, versus something like enhancing road safety and vehicle data pipeline. Scalable data ingestion solution is a much better topic because it clearly outlines that your goal is still to basically enhance the road safety like around your niche, but you did this technical work to kind of improve that aspect. So that's going to be one of the example of various different things.